shortly after joining Indiana. Kurt, who's Kurt? Kurt Signetti. Where is Kurt Signetti?
Right here.
Huh? Oh. Come here. Come here. It's Kurt Signetti.
Hi again, everybody. Nothing says America is back, our president is fine, like a president who doesn't know who's standing next to him. That bizarre episode with the national champion Indiana Hoosiers football team came one day ahead of Donald Trump's really important high-stakes trip to China. Donald Trump has never really been known for logical or cogent conduct in public, something his defenders claim is part of his madman appeal. But in Trump 2.0, that erratic behavior, that madman persona, is getting a lot weirder and a lot more frequent and a lot more public. Our allies and adversaries alike are beginning to take notice. Case in point, earlier today, Donald Trump took to his social media site, Truth Social, posting 12 times in less than 1 hour and a half, including this particularly bizarre post. Trump posted, quote, "Democrats love sewage," with an AI-generated image of former President Barack Obama, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and former President Joe Biden, three people who are no longer in office. They were in a pool of sewage in the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. Donald Trump has a total fixation with painting the reflecting pool bright blue. It's a fixation which has led costs to skyrocket. Like, he didn't just say, well, paint it and I'm going to go back to leading the country at war or fixing the economy. He's obsessed with the paint color and talking about the painting project. He's obsessed with that while Americans are souring on another one of Donald Trump's pet DC construction/vanity projects. New York Times is reporting that the repairs to the reflecting pool have ballooned in cost past Donald Trump's initial estimate of $1.8 million. They are now projected to cost the American taxpayer $13.1 million, a more than sevenfold increase in a paint job. While Trump is posting away on Truth Social about painting projects and construction projects and obsessing with remaking Washington, D.C. in his image, no matter the cost to the taxpayer, he continues to turn his back on governing and on the issues that his own voters sent him to the White House to deal with. Things like the high cost of, well, everything. Today we learned that the inflation rate skyrocketed at its fastest rate in 3 years, as sharp increases in energy costs caused by Donald Trump's war in Iran drove up prices for American consumers. Donald Trump's obsession with his golden ballroom and bright blue painted reflecting pool as Americans struggle to pay their bills is intended, we suppose, into turning him into some, I don't know, great renovator or political figure in America's story. The new reporting suggests it is actually having the opposite effect. New York Times reports this, quote, "For decades, many Chinese viewed the United States with a mix of admiration, envy, and resentment. Trump's ascent and his volatile second term have shattered that image. In January, a nationalistic Beijing think tank published a triumphant report about Trump's first year back in office. The report argued that Trump's tariffs, his attacks on our allies, anti-immigration policies, and assaults on the American political establishment had inadvertently strengthened China and weakened the United States. Its title, quote, "Thank Trump." The report called Trump, quote, "an accelerator of American political decay, with the United States sliding toward polarization, institutional dysfunction, and even, quote, Latin American-style instability. At this turning point in history," the authors wrote, "what we hear is the heavy and haunting toll of an empire's evening bell." Donald Trump tolling the bell for American decline, post by post by post, in the middle of the night on his obscure social media site, is where we start the hour with some of our favorite reporters and friends. New York Times reporter Michael Crowley is here. Also joining us, Media Matters for America President Angelo Carasone is back. Also joining us, political analyst, the former Senator Claire McCaskill is here. Michael Crowley, China welcomes the United States of America in a position of truly unparalleled and unprecedented strength. How do we, as a country, deal with that? And how do you, as a journalist, tell that story without getting attacked or investigated or prosecuted or persecuted by Donald Trump?
Well, Nicole, of course, we just try to tell the story as accurately and fairly as we can. And this is one that is not convenient for this president. And, unfortunately for the United States of America, President Trump does arrive in Beijing at a moment of really unusual weakness because of this standoff he is in with, a country that is far from a global superpower. I mean, we are really tied down here by Iran in a way that I think that the president was not expecting. And I'm suspect that he finds it extremely frustrating and embarrassing. And it's possible that that helps to explain that explosion of somewhat or more than somewhat erratic tweets last night. I have, it seems quite likely that he's headed to China with a lot of unhappiness about the situation that he's in. This does, as you suggested, I think, confirm a thesis that Xi Jinping and many Chinese elites have had for years now, which is that the United States and the West are in a state of decline, that our political systems are broken, that we've been squandering blood and treasure in overseas conflicts that have resulted in making us weaker and not stronger. And, many American adversaries like Vladimir Putin and, of course, including Xi Jinping, and by the way, Iran's leadership, which certainly has its own worries, but not this one, they don't have to worry about democracy. They don't have to worry about elections, the midterms, the polls. They have to worry about revolutions that come and overthrow them. And if they lose, they die. So the outcome is worse. But their ability to hold power has been pretty effective and resilient. So Xi Jinping's not going anywhere anytime soon. But he looks at President Trump knowing that the Constitution prevents him from running for office again. We'll see whether Trump tries to ignore that or not. But certainly he cares about the midterm elections and the plight of Republicans. So Xi Jinping knows that he has that leverage as well. And he also knows that the Iranians have that leverage over President Trump, that they have time. It doesn't look like there's going to be a revolution. There definitely are going to be midterm elections. That all adds up to a very difficult visit for this president.
I mean, the irony, Michael Crowley, is that the thing that's making Donald Trump unpopular is that he's acting like he is a leader of a different country, a different system of governance. It is the anti-democratic conduct that has driven his approval ratings down to, where are they, 30%, the lowest they've been since he entered the political arena. And his autocratic, ambitions to build monuments to himself are leading to an approval rating that is really almost unprecedented globally. What is your reporting on whether anyone is trying to stop the political death spiral?
Well, I don't want to call it Shakespearean. It's overused and probably exaggerated, but I do think that there's a quality here that's maybe literary or cinematic, which is that, President Trump, I think, felt like he was on such a roll. It wasn't that long ago, Nicole. In February, he had taken out Nicolas Maduro, with whom the U.S. had battled for many, many years, relatively painlessly. He was squeezing Cuba, and I think thought that he was going to be able to bring down the Cuban government very quickly. The previous year, the U.S. had conducted very surgical and effective airstrikes on Iran's nuclear program. Of course, we know they didn't completely destroy the program as was claimed, but they were still quite impressive. And it, appears that President Trump was just flush with his sense of power. And almost a kind of, certainly on the global stage, a feeling of almost omnipotence, I think. And so he appears to have disregarded warnings that going to war with Iran would be more complicated than he expected, and accepted predictions that Iran's regime would quickly fall apart and whoever came after would settle for peace or be some friend of the United States. So, that is the peril of power. He was exercising his power very broadly, and it wound up burning him when he overreached.
Claire McCaskill, we know from a lot of reporting from Michael's News Organization and others that the thing that drives Trump almost more than anything else is fear of humiliation, fear of being mocked, fear of not being loved. Here's how King Charles returned home to the UK and talked about the visit. This is an exchange with Rod Stewart and King Charles.
May I say well done in the Americans? You were superb. Absolutely superb. Put that little black bag in his face.
A chuckle there. And again, it's a little moment, but King Charles chuckling with Rod Stewart after Rod Stewart says, you put that little rat bag in his place, and Charles doesn't come to his defense, doesn't say anything, just laughs. Seems like exactly the sort of thing that would rise to...
Yeah, I don't get what's going on around him. There's his children. I mean, where's Ivanka? Susie Wiles, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio. When he goes on these Twitter
Ivanka
rants,
is buying airplanes with their billions of dollars. I mean, Jared Kushner got $2 billion worth of beef from the Saudi. I mean, where's Ivanka? She's spending all the money that her husband, who's playing top diplomat, got from the Middle East governments that we're negotiating with. They're all in on it.
I listen, no question that the corruption of the Trump family is unprecedented in our country's history. My point is, though, that she could talk to her father. Susie Wiles is the chief of staff. She's the first woman chief of staff in the United States of America, and I have never seen a more impotent chief of staff. I have never seen somebody so without any ability to set an agenda or execute an agenda, and to tell the principal, to tell the president, you're hurting yourself. Does he really think Him posting this nonsense till 2, 3, 4 in the morning and then starting again the next day? Does he really think that's making him look strong? Does he really believe that? And if he does, we've got a much, much bigger problem.
The DOJ now trying to pressure war coverage at Murdoch's Wall Street Journal. That's, of course, Fox News' sister outlet. They're using subpoenas, and the government is claiming illegal leaks to, according to many experts, abuse power to shape or stifle critical war coverage, which, of course, the country is aware of because it is partly the press and information about the war, its reality, that's made it a very unpopular war, plus the economic fallout. And I have more on that part of the story later tonight. It is a problem for Trump and the midterms. But this story is one where journalists must actually also kind of weigh how we, in this case, our colleagues at the Journal, peers, competitors, whatever you call it, but how journalists report on something that Trump has done more than any other administration since Nixon. How do we report on the government trying to make us, our reporting, or our colleagues and competitors' reporting part of the story? Well, the Journal has decided to report on unusual subpoenas that its own journalist reporters received from the Trump DOJ, as you see here. The masthead is the Wall Street Journal. This story is about the Wall Street Journal. This is reporting about how they are reporting and being potentially intimidated or punished through this government that they're reporting on. Now, to be clear, this has been a losing revenge streak in legal moves by Trump. And you probably, if you follow the news, have heard about them. We've seen these efforts against people. James Comey was a big story. He did an interview on MS NOW with Nicole just yesterday. We're also seeing it against institutions and journalism itself. That article I just put on the screen notes that the paper received grand jury subpoenas for records of its reporters covering this war. Now, this is a huge deal. This is about war, which is one of the obviously most important and grave powers a president wields. And remember, this war, which has proven so unpopular, is being waged unilaterally. The president did not work with Congress. The president did not address the nation up front or leave any time for any kind of meaningful dissent or protest. He launched a proactive attack on Iran. The strait that was once open for our energy needs is now closed. The ceasefire exists. We don't know what comes next. But I mentioned that brief war history to say that with Congress cut out of the loop and the American public cut out of the loop, one of the only other measures left is journalism reporting how the war is going and the facts about the war. And the facts have been, to put it fairly, mixed, negative. Plenty of them look bad for the Donald Trump administration, for the war planning, and obviously for the gas prices and the economy we're all living through. And against that type of accurate, or shall we say evidence-based information, this government, your government, is responding by trying to intimidate, legally stifle, and potentially jail the people doing that reporting. You know, I always try to talk to you. I mean, I'm talking through a camera, right? But I always try to talk to you directly about what we know and don't know and what's happening. This is what's happening. And we know it's a problem. We also know that our Constitution, the 250 years that we're celebrating, argues exactly against any leader, I don't care what party, who would try to rule our government and crush the First Amendment. It's the first for a reason, and crush this type of free speech. So that's why this matters. Andrew, as I mentioned, joins me shortly. I want to tell you about the methods because it's really something. Trump delivering his message on a sticky note with the word treason in Sharpie placed atop a stack of printed articles that he handed to the acting attorney general. That's how some of this got started, according to a very detailed account from CNN's reporting. Now, that official is, of course, Todd Blanche. And he's under this public pressure by Trump to take measures that, I want to be clear, might ultimately, if he takes them, see Mr. Blanche investigated, sanctioned, or disbarred. He knows, with his law degree and his experience, that if he actually is going out and pursuing baseless, false claims against journalists or others that are only designed to intimidate, to do selective prosecution, or to shape war propaganda, yeah, you can lose your law license over that. And if you look at these polls, it's not clear that Trump's friends are going to be in office forever. Trump shared a literal enemies list as well that demands that Blanche indict John Brennan, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama. So it's someone else's post, as you see, and it's Donald J. Trump, the sitting president, who shared it, reposting that. The idea of the Trump DOJ indicting Barack Obama may sound far-fetched, even after everything. But the evidence we have shows that in his demands, Trump is serious. It was once far-fetched to think he would abuse legal powers against so many sitting lawmakers, an FBI director, a CIA director, the current Republican leading the Fed. That's already happened. I keep showing you this chart because it's a fact, and it is a problem if our country lets this become normal or memory hold like so much other civic amnesia that we have. This is our current situation. So you can't just look at the new next effort by Trump to turn up the heat on a supplicant like Blanche and say, well, he won't go to Clinton or Obama. He very well may try. Remember, this list of faces were already pursued, most of them, under an attorney general that Donald Trump just canned for not doing enough, in his view. That's why we have Blanche instead of Bondi. Now, the guardrails have still prevented any of these efforts from succeeding. Depending on how you count, he's 0 for 20 or 0 for 25, 0 and 25, but none of these cases have led to any conviction. Many of them, as you saw, have been tossed. But Trump views Blanche as his enforcer.
We have a man who's doing a great job, I'll tell you. I knew it because he kept me out of jail for years. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. I said the other day that some of that stuff should be looked into. They said, weaponization. He's a terrible human being. Weaponization, right, Cash? They blame me for weaponization.
He is not the communicator he once was. Indeed, Donald Trump, who used to be pretty good at PR, knows that you don't just repeat the attacks on yourself. They blame me for weaponization, he says, reminding everyone that he is weaponizing the government, using a term that even the right has said is bad, because he is weaponizing the government. You can call it weaponization, you can call it lawfare. The actual term in the law, when you prove that the government has gone after a person for illicit reasons rather than just investigate the facts where they lead, it's called selective prosecution. It gets your case tossed. It can get the prosecutors, of course, sanctioned, as I mentioned, which is something that Mr. Blanche should think about. It's not my job to give him legal advice, but we'll run this clip later if we have to, if Mr. Blanche ultimately not only discredits himself, but loses his law license or worse, because if he goes forward with some of these things, like going after Obama and Clinton because the president asked for it, yeah, that would look like selective prosecution without at least clear evidence to the contrary. Now, Trump is taking these legal weapons well beyond the Obamas or the Democrats that he's called out, or the critics. He is now, as I mentioned, the lead story that we're going to bring Andrew in on, going after the conservative institution of Murdoch's Wall Street Journal. Now, previously, you may recall, he sued them over their Epstein coverage and lost in the civil courts. And I want to be clear. Anyone in this country can afford themselves the civil courts, including government incumbents. So that is something he can do. He lost, so he had no case, but he can do that. But after failing, what we're seeing now, and why I mentioned it to bring us up to speed to tonight, is Trump's doubling down with this criminal probe, which is much more serious, using a criminal investigation and those kind of subpoenas for journalists, which carry the implied threat of potential jail time if you don't cooperate, and using the part of our system that is strong. When you say to the courts, well, this could be national security or this affects war, there might be illegal government leaks, that can matter. And by the way, the DOJ is allowed, of course, to pursue illegal government leaks. That usually means going after the person in government who broke the law. The journalist didn't, if they only reported something that came from the government, but they can do that. The question here is whether this is abuse of power, leaning on that type of power to silence and censor the war coverage. Now, Rupert Murdoch is a big figure. He has a complex history with Trump, but he still runs Fox News, which nowadays Trump and MAGA see as a very friendly place. But just like Putin started with the biggest opposition critics, but moved on to other people that used to be in his inner circle, Trump will go after you even if you own Fox News. Nobody is really safe if you start publishing or airing things he disagrees with. Remember, Rupert Murdoch is such a kind of big political figure. They had that whole show and character based off him in HBO's Succession. Now, this is fiction, echoing perhaps some view of reality, but they cast Murdoch as someone who was tough and willing to fight anyone.
Here's the safety briefing. If you move against me, I'll put a hole in the back of your head.
Tough guy. That is a fictional character based on the real Murdoch, but plenty of folks said that that toughness and that style reflects the now aging patriarch of that conservative empire.
Well, I'm glad the Wall Street Journal is resisting. They've done terrific reporting. There's been other great reporting by other news organizations. The New York Times, the Washington Post continues to do excellent reporting as well. I mean, this is part of an attack from all angles on the press. So you have these grand jury subpoenas against the Wall Street Journal. You had a raid on the home of a Washington Post reporter where they confiscated all of her. It was an unprecedented raid in a national security investigation, seizing all of her electronic devices. You have the EEOC bringing discrimination complaint against the New York Times because a white male reporter didn't get a promotion he wanted. You have apparently the FBI apparently investigating the Atlantic magazine for reporting on Kash Patel and his alleged heavy drinking and his other behavior. So really all across the board, you're seeing this administration use every weapon within its possession to attack the press, to harass the press, and to endeavor to intimidate the press.
Right now, FBI Director Kash Patel, the top federal investigator and domestic intelligence chief in the country, is facing a massive and growing list of scandals about his alleged alcohol abuse, absenteeism, paranoid abuses of power on the job. It's an incredibly embarrassing look for the Trump administration and a genuine threat to American security. But Trump doesn't seem to care about any of that, as long as it puts his administration in the spotlight.
FBI Director Kash Patel, does he get enough publicity? If you could get a little more publicity, it would be very...
It's almost like he's happy his FBI director is mired in scandal. All press is not good press, I don't think. There, Mr. Trump. Now, today, Kash Patel was on Capitol Hill facing questions from lawmakers about his various scandals, and Senator Chris Van Hollen pressed him on the reporting about Patel's alleged drinking habits.
I cannot imagine ever having to worry about former FBI directors Wray or Mueller spending multiple weekends drinking heavily at the Poodle Room in Las Vegas. So there have been no occasions during your tenure when FBI personnel were unable to promptly reach you.
Absolutely not. You can ask my entire workforce. They hear from me at every single hour of the day.
It's been written and documented.
You are literally saying it.
No, I'm saying that these are reports, Director Patel.
No, unlike your baseless reports, the only person that was slinging margaritas in El Salvador on the taxpayer dollar with a convicted gangbanging rapist was you.
In your response to me earlier, where you had a little bit of a blow-up, you made a couple provably false statements.
So did you.
Do you know, Mr. Director, that it is a crime to lie to Congress? Do you know that?
I do not lie to Congress.
Okay. A couple of things to say about that. First off, when Patel accuses Senator Van Hollen of slinging margaritas on the taxpayer dime, he's referring to this photo. The photo I'm going to show you again. There it is. When Senator Van Hollen traveled to El Salvador to check in on a man the Trump administration wrongfully sent to a notorious mega prison, Senator Van Hollen said at the time that the drinks you see on the table were actually put there by the government of El Salvador to make it seem like they were not abusing the prisoners at that facility. But more importantly, it's notable that Kash Patel is categorically denying that the story about his drinking was true. That story cited at least 9 sources for its various allegations about Patel's behavior. There were more people who came forward, according to the reporter, after the story was published. And Patel was so outraged by the story that 2 people familiar with the matter told MSNOW that Patel has ordered polygraphs for dozens of members of his team in a desperate search for the people who leaked to that reporter. Now, it is hard to imagine why Patel would be hunting for leakers by using polygraph tests when he says the story is completely made up. That makes no sense. Patel has spent a lot of time and energy denying these specific stories about his alleged drinking. We already know a good deal about his drinking habits from public accounts and things he said publicly. I mean, we have all seen the footage of Patel guzzling beer with members of the U.S. men's hockey team while on an official work trip. And it's not like Kash Patel was ever shy about talking about his drinking habits before he was the FBI director.
Sunday nights would roll around and the president would try to find me. I'd be like, sir, I am on call every day, including Sundays, except the very late evening, where Sundays are for God, hockey, and beer, not in that order. And I will resurface back on very early Monday morning.
It turned into Flannel Fridays because I was having this beer and I was wearing a flannel shirt. And now it's this massive thing online. I'm going to be on the sheet playing in the beer league, having a PBR, and then I'll return your phone call. Obviously, I'm kidding, but it was funny. We had this tradition every night where he would call it a final. So we'd have dinner and then we'd go somewhere and have like a final drink. Everybody should have a beer or 3. It's gonna be pretty lit. I might have some special apparel.
We're gonna throw down. There's gonna be bourbon. There's gonna be sparklers.
We ended up in northern Italy and we were slamming Negronis at our last night. And I was like, Devin, I need a subpoena. I went to Devin and I told him that in the morning. He goes, dude, if you're gonna start drinking at 9 a.m., get out of my office.
Can I be the first one to say that if I ever go before Senate confirmation, they're going to call me an alcoholic?
His words, not my words. I mean, the guy had enough foresight to joke that he might one day face questions about his drinking. But now that he is actually in a big, important government job, he's very clearly outraged by those very questions from the Senate. Kash Patel's tenure as FBI director has been one embarrassing scandal after another from the very beginning. Tonight, just before we got on air, a former top career FBI official spoke out for the first time about the chaos in Patel's FBI. And in the early days of the Trump administration, FBI hostage negotiator Brian Driscoll was elevated to be the interim FBI director while Patel was being confirmed. And he says that right from the beginning, things were not going well.
Patel told you that as long as you were not prolific on social media, didn't donate to the Democratic Party, didn't vote for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, that the vetting would not be an issue.
Yes, yeah. It's exactly, it's not funny, but that's exactly what he said. He's like, okay, just tell me if you voted for a Democrat in the last 5 elections. Let's take this conversation's over and conclude the phone call. So it's just disgusted and shocked.
Why were you disgusted?
Because now my fear that there was a political wave coming towards the FBI with vitriol directed at the FBI, it was palpable. And there was a sense of shock that, like, well, I am really close to this thing.
Patel and his deputies were politicizing the FBI from day one of this administration. That's what you just heard from Brian Driscoll. And every day we learn more and more about how the FBI has been fundamentally changed under Patel's leadership. Just tonight, the news outlet Notice reports that the FBI has created a so-called payback squad, a team specifically comprised of agents who are willing to pursue Trump's political targets. That's according to 4 people who spoke to Notice on the condition of anonymity. Everywhere you look in this administration, Trump is reshaping the government to focus on his personal priorities, to target his enemies, to focus on the things he cares about. And he just doesn't care about what gets lost in the process. Michael Feinberg was an assistant special agent in charge at the FBI before being pushed out by Kash Patel. And Tim Weiner is a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter. He's the author of the book Enemies, The History of the FBI. And his latest book is called The Mission, the CIA in the 21st Century. Must-read books in the moment we're living in. Thank you both for being here. Let me start with you, Michael. There's so much I want to ask you about, but I want to start with what we learned today from Brian Driscoll and how he described his job security at the FBI under Patel as being reliant on his willingness to purge agents that investigated Trump. I mean, you not only worked under Driscoll, but you yourself were, of course. I think everybody remembers this, even though you help explain government and law enforcement to us every day. But you yourself were pushed out of the FBI for your connection to an agent who investigated Trump. What was your reaction to seeing him talk about all of that in the interview?
This is going to sound a little weird. I'm glad to see it finally coming out in the open because we all called him Driz. What Driz said in that interview was something we all knew, not just intuitively, but from the very profligate rumor mill that goes on at the Hoover Building in the FBI's field offices. It was no big secret that there were going to be political litmus tests for everyone. The weekend that I was informed I was under the radar, shortly before I resigned, one of my friends who is very high in the organization still gave me a heads up that if I was put in a position where I had to speak to either then Deputy Director Dan Bongino or Director Kash Patel, I should expect to be asked whom I voted for.
Mm-hmm. So it's not surprising. And it seems like it's kind of an unspoken thing that everybody knew that this had happened to him. And now he's finally coming forward, which is certainly significant. I was the Justice Department of improperly paying out FBI agents who were suspended for misconduct, but who appear to be political allies of Trump. I mean, this taken together with Driscoll's account seems to paint a picture where people who signed up to be career officials, non-political, are being asked to do something that is certainly not what they signed up for, at the risk of termination, I guess. How do you see it?
I think that's a very accurate way to put it. In a different environment, I might put it a little more bluntly and a little more harshly. Mm-hmm. But what we're seeing now runs fundamentally counter to the idea of an apolitical law enforcement or intelligence community apparatus. And it's worth noting, many of the agents who have now received settlements or been reinstated, when they were forced out to begin with, I believe a number of them received funding from a foundation run by Kash Patel himself when he was outside of government.
It's like bribery.
It's certainly some form of corruption, I think.
Let me bring Tim into this conversation. And Tim, another part of Driscoll's interview that stuck out to me was when he said that Patel told him, quote, the FBI tried to put the president in jail and he hasn't forgotten it. I mean, it's a very straightforward way of kind of calling out this obsession, I should call it. In your view, does that fundamental disdain for the institution itself explain why he doesn't seem to care if the integrity or effectiveness of the FBI is being jeopardized under Patel?
You know, Jen, back in 2020, in the first Trump administration, Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr, who's not a woke snowflake, said that the idea of putting Kash Patel in charge of the FBI, which was a very live idea back then, was the height of insanity, that it would happen over his dead body. Things haven't improved very much. When Patel is a conspiracy theorist, he is conducting, an ideological purge at the FBI. He has decimated the ranks of national security, intelligence, counter and espionage people, and we're at war. And we're at war with Iran, which has had terrorist proxies running around the world since the 1980s. Not an opportune time to take out the Iran squad, as Patel did. All of this in the name of retribution. All of this in the name of payback for investigating the crimes of Donald Trump.
MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin was in that hearing room. She joins me now from West Palm Beach, Florida. Ashley Parker is back with us, and also with me, MS Now legal analyst Catherine Christian. Lisa, first of all, talk about just the mood in that room and the driving message from survivors.
I think, Chris, the driving message from survivors was do not stop. You must find accountability. And accountability comes in a variety of forms. We heard from advocates who were saying, look, there are threads that still need to be pulled on in terms of potential criminal investigations that can be done. When the Department of Justice and the FBI said in July of 2025 that there was no more criminal